Welcome to the Circuit of Success Podcast.
The Circuit of Success Podcast.
With your host, Brett Gilliland.
Brett Gilliland, Visionary Wealth Advisor.
The Circuit of Success Podcast. Let's start the show.
Welcome to the Circuit of Success. I'm your host, Brett Gilliland, and today I'm so excited to be with an entrepreneur, an author. He is the founder of Lululemon, and his name is Chip Wilson. Chip, how you doing today?
Fantastic, Brett. Fantastic.
Awesome. Well, it's great to have you. It's you've got a heck of a story, and I'm excited for our listeners to hear that. But like on every show, I always ask Chip it's a big question, but what helped make you the man you are today? Because you are more than obviously the father of 5 boys, a husband, an entrepreneur, and an author. What helped you make all those things?
Well, of course, everyone wonders how much is genetics and how much is environment. And I think I had the perfect amount of both. You know, as athletic, you know, a father who was an athlete and a mom who was a home sewer. And then I think we just never had much money. We kind of that lower kind of middle class. Dad was you don't make much money as a phys ed teacher. And, but I think I had a lot of drive. And I think that I sometimes wonder, is that genetic or is that, was that built into me? I don't know. But I feel like I just wanted to succeed. I wanted to find out what was going on in the world. Had all these ideas, and I wondered if everyone else had the same idea.
And so that drive obviously helped you very much in the business. But we'll talk about Lululemon in a little bit. But I know you got into what? You had a surf company, you had a skate company, a snowboarding company, all sorts of stuff. So tell us about those.
Well, when I graduated at university, I was 25, so I was on the 8-year bachelor program.
Hey, nothing wrong with that.
I started to do triathlons, and that was a long time ago, so 1980, I guess. And then there was only about 10 people in the world doing triathlons. I quickly found out that there was no good clothing, especially for that kind of distance, and a lot of rashing, a lot of issues. And because my mom was a sewer and I had some ideas, I started making triathlon clothing, but of course there wasn't enough people to make it. I was originally from California, San Diego, and living in Canada. And so with that, I started supplementing what I had and started bringing up surf gear from Gordon Smith and Stussy and OP, Billabong, Quicksilver, and that into Canada. So really the first person to bring that into Canada, kind of a virgin territory for that market. And so I think that I just, that the triathlon stuff didn't go, but the surf stuff went really well. And then that kind of had its rise and fall, because you start in almost every industry, you start off with 3 businesses, it goes to 500 and then falls to 3 again. And so as that was going up and falling, then skateboarding was coming up and then falling, and then snowboarding, you know, came up and then started falling too. So I followed those general trends.
And so you followed those trends, and then you saw another trend around mindfulness and yoga, and you started this little company called Lululemon. So talk to us about that. I'm wearing Lululemon pants right now too. Hope that's all right. I wear them all the time.
Well, you never know what people are wearing behind the microphone.
That's right.
They're sitting down.
That's right.
I think, like I said, I saw these, athletic social trends, rise and fall. I had failed a couple times. I tried beach volleyball and I tried mountain biking, but what I discovered is neither of those sports, which became big, no one wanted to look like that on the street. So, I sold my surf skate snowboard company, and I sat around for a while and I kind of looked around, and of course I was injured from falling a lot, snowboarding and skateboarding. So I started doing yoga, first class that was in Vancouver type of thing. And I looked around and I went, this is pretty cool. This is going to be, I could sense it went from 6 people to 30 people in 1 month. And if I extrapolated back the surf skate snowboard business, I went, wow, this is going to be just as big and as much opportunity. So I had an expertise in technical apparel, especially first layer stretch for women that went under snowboard clothing. And I just started making it a version of that for yoga. And and then I could go into a million different ways of going from there. But maybe you have another question you want to lead me
Well,
to.
I think it's, it's one thing to have an idea. It's one thing to say, oh, my mom, knew how to do this stuff. I know how to do that stuff. But I mean, how did you go out and then just create this Lululemon craze? And I know we could talk about that for hours, but it has become a brand that I think is, in the athletic wear, obviously, but it's also a symbol. The kids want it. Moms want it, dads want it. Now, heck, some of my boys, want to wear the t-shirts and stuff. I mean, you've created this thing that's become a brand, a symbol, right? And so how did that happen? Because it doesn't just happen overnight.
Yeah, so you're looking for the aha moment and then what to do with it type of thing, is
Yeah.
sense. When So I was in the middle of this yoga class, and I was only like 15 days into it, and I read an article in the newspaper where it said 60% of the graduates at a university were now women. And in 1998, that was a phenomenal number, because when I went to university, it felt like 20%.
Sure.
You know, maybe because I couldn't get any dates, it felt like 20%. I don't know.
Yeah, right.
It really, I mean, that was astounding to me. And I'd done work and a lot of reading in Africa about the whole goal was to educate women, because the more educated women are, then the fewer children they will have and the longer they'll wait to have children. So I extrapolated it out and I went, oh my God, for the first time ever, we're going to end up with a brand new employee and a brand new consumer that's never existed before. A highly educated university woman that now goes into the workforce and now suddenly isn't leaving at the age of 24 to have a family. And so they're going to wait till they're 32. So that's what I extrapolated. So with that, market then became the new Lululemon employee, and it became a customer that was highly educated, media savvy, owned their own condo, traveled was athletic, stylish, basically a lot of consumer spending involved. And so so that was there. And then also I could sense that in the 90s, there was a lot of talk in the media about breast cancer for women. And I'd sensed from being in the workforce and being the age I am that prior to that, women who came into the workforce were kind of emulating their fathers. And they were doing the 3 martini lunches. They were smoking cigarettes because they thought that that's what was successful. And I think, when you combine that with the heavy dose of the pill at that time, I think it created, the atmosphere for breast cancer at that time. So I think when these girls that were 20, now going to be 22 to 32, who I call super girls, had these power women, mothers who were basically unhealthy. And these super girls just didn't want to live their life like that. And I think that yoga was something that was accessible, it was feminine. And when I mean accessible, they could do it lunch hour, they could do it in the morning. You didn't have to go to snow, find the surf, you didn't have to find the mountains. And it was, so it was feminine, stylish, the whole works. And I think when you combine that with, I had a couple other ideas. Do you want to hear them?
Sure.
Well, I call the Supergirls because that in the 90s, for the first time, you saw a girl with superheroes like cartoons. And so they were wearing Lycra and they were equal in power to men. And I think that the Supergirl mothers were wearing all the big power suits with the big shoulder pads, looking very mannish. But who the girls were looking up to were these like Lycra-clad power superheroes on TV. So I also think that in the 90s, you had amazing, probably divorces peaked. And I think you had fathers who never knew what to do with their daughters.
Right.
And they became baseball coaches, soccer coaches, and athletic coaches. And so I think these girls became exceedingly athletic. And I think that basically all those things kind of combined together provided the perfect template for this new market and this new sport.
So I pause there for a second. I'm just thinking in my mind about it. It seems like you are a very deep thinker, right? I mean, you keep thinking, I think this, I think that. I mean, you're tying the kind of the comic Wonder Woman type person to the business woman today. And you bring that together into this brand, right? So when you say, I think, are you a thinker? Are you sitting around in a room thinking all day? What are you doing?
I'm probably a reader. I read
Okay.
a phenomenal amount and always have. Where'd that come from? I don't know, but it's I'd read every magazine, 3 or 4 newspapers a day. I very rarely watched TV when I was young. And even to today, except for Netflix is kind of taking. And I think that I just was always extrapolating. I was extrapolating out ideas, and I was meshing different ideas together. And basically, when I could see 3 things happen very, very quickly, I would jump on it, which is kind of what I did in surf, skate, snowboard, and then again in yoga. So I would have seen on the first yoga class I would have had a little poster on a telephone post with a little rip-off telephone, that type of thing.
Yeah.
And then maybe a couple days later, I would have heard 2 women talk in the coffee shop about yoga. And then I would have read an article about yoga in the newspaper or something, that and I'd go, oh my God, like I've never like seen anything about yoga. And now 3 things in 1 week, like that's when an entrepreneur, someone who has an idea, jumps on it. And then once that 3 things happen, I mean, my mind immediately goes out 20 years and goes, now, is this something that I should do or not do? And at that time in my life, I could definitely have done nothing. I had sold my first company, and when I mean nothing, that means I'd have to get a job as a barista at Starbucks to, but I could have paid off a house and bought a car and sent my kids to school. So, but I decided to jump back in. The idea was too good.
Yeah. So talk about the success of Lululemon, but on the flip side of that, I would like to talk about what's some of the stuff that maybe brought you to your knees, or some of your failures that you've publicly shared that, so many of us, I think we look at people like you and we say, oh gosh, here's this guy that had this, meteoric that to success, but clearly it wasn't that. And so what are some of those failures that, as a newer Lululemon founder, that you were bumping into, that were really tough?
Well, yeah, even before I say that, I think to say 20 years, I had this company called the West Beach Surf Company, and it didn't make any money. So it was every year I thought it would do better. Every year I thought it would do better every year. And at the end of the day, I had these 2 retail stores of our own. We made our own clothing, designed it, put it in our stores. And these 2 stores made $1 million a year. And this international wholesale business we had lost $1 million a year. So what I'm really getting at there is that there was like 20 years of learning. And then to be able to sell that and sit back and go, okay, what didn't work about that and what did work about it? So what did work about it is the vertical retailing, getting rid of the wholesaler. Now, almost everybody gets into wholesale because you can make a few samples, show it to a lot of people, get a lot of orders, and then go to a manufacturer and get it done. But then there's a big middleman in between that's taking a lot of the profit. So I'm getting around to your question.
Oh, this is great.
But it was a matter of, I had to get to 5 stores in order to get economy of scale production, in order to get my costs down on my product to make any product. And when you come out with a brand new brand and a brand new product with no marketing dollars, 0, I had none, then that's a struggle. And that's what almost every entrepreneur that goes into anything that needs mass production goes through. So I bought a house. I bought a house for about $500,000 in 1998. I borrowed $200,000 on it. Got through about a year. Borrowed another $200,000 on it, and then that's it, right? And then I ran out of that, and then I had done some wholesale because I had to do wholesale in order to get my economy of scale numbers up. That company went bankrupt. And so now I didn't have enough money to pay my employees. And so I got a job. West Beach moved back from Portland back to Vancouver, and they offered me a job to be CEO. So I took that job in order to fund Lululemon. And then we ran out of that money. And then and then that Christmas, if I hadn't got fired from West Beach, because they really combined Sim skateboards and West Beach snowboard together, and so that CEO took over. So I got a $50,000 severance. If it wasn't for that
little breathing room,
it never would have happened.
Yeah.
So there was a bunch of things in there that, actually another thing that happened is that the Vancouver housing prices were going up so fast that I was able actually to take another 100,000, at that point.
Right.
So there I was mortgaged to the hilt and had everything in this business, and it was either going to work or I was in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, and homeless, right? But talk about that, because there's a lot of learning even just in that. Is a lot of people are listening to this, right? They may be driving down the road, they may be in their job and they're not happy. They've got this great idea, this vision that's 20 years long, but a lot of people are scared to go take 3 loans off their house, right? And go into debt. And as you would say, push all the chips in, right? A lot of people are scared to do that. So what was it about you that was different, do you think?
Well, I think for me, because I'd seen it 3 times before in the surf skate snowboard business, I had an idea of where it was going. I also had evidence of this new business model of being vertical and not wholesale. I could also sense that whoever got into a Lululemon product, you could see in their eyes, you could see how they feel. When they bought the clothing, they just didn't buy one thing, they were buying 3 things. And it wasn't, it was just like I had to have faith, because I knew I had the right product at the right time for the right market. And then I had to I wanted to let word of mouth make it work. And so anyway, but you're getting back to the people that are sitting on the freeway listening to it. I think there's 2 things for me, and that is, if I was sitting on my deathbed and I didn't do it, would I always be regretting it? I only have one life to live, and is it a life worth living? And I think the other thing on the other side I look at, which is quite recent, would my 12-year-old self be proud of me today? And that really is an interesting thought, because it goes, like, did I play a life of fear, or did I live a life of possibility?
Just writing that down. Will my 12-year-old self be proud of me today? That's phenomenal. And I think too, it has become this like luxury brand, right? It's whether you have your iPhone and a Lululemon pants and your, Louis Vuitton purse, right? For the women, in the world. And it's, but how does that happen to when at the time, I guess there really wasn't a lot of competition, but you're still able now to go out and sell a $120 pair of pants in that world, right? Or a pair of yoga pants when everybody else wants to charge $50. I mean, how do you get away with that?
Well, because people are under the perception that it's the same product.
Yeah,
and
it's not.
At the end of the day, the idea was to make a better quality product at a better price than the competition. The fact is the competition can't make a better product than Lululemon. And the reason is because Lululemon is vertical, doesn't have any wholesale. So it can make, because it only sells to itself, it doesn't have to have the same markups. So what am I saying there? So what ends up, because Lululemon can make a better quality product at a better price, its goods are made out of nylon, not polyester. So polyester stinks, and polyester doesn't feel the same way that nylon does. It doesn't combine with the lycra or the technical properties that we can put inside fibers can go inside nylon so much better than polyester. So the anti-stain, anti-wicking, the breathability, it's just an entirely different product. But you can't really, Lululemon was set up never to kind of like be a raw about itself, so it doesn't have to be. We put all our money into training and development of people and the quality of the product, and we let people talk for the product.
So while you're talking about that, I know personal development was a big deal for you personally, but also it was a really big deal for your employees. So talk about that and what role that played in the company.
Well, I was selfish, and that when I started Lululemon, I just decided I never wanted to be with anybody who wasn't phenomenal and great, and I wanted to go to work with every day. That's where I spent all my time. So, so from that point of view, I just want people to know that it was a selfish thing, and but I also knew that suddenly you had all these women that were out of university, and I think I was the only person that could really see that they were going to be around for at least 8 years, 9 years before they had a family. So they were really worth investing in. And I got to get, no other company was investing in women at that time. There was just no return on it.
Hmm.
So I think the women that came to Lululemon, like, they were ready for it. They wanted something. And because personal development at that time was very unmasculine, but very feminine. I think this is the other thing that made Lululemon work, in that women were really willing to take on, like, who am I and how am I the most effective? How do I communicate? What is responsibility? What is integrity? These things that I think men were masking, but women were really willing to face up to. So our whole program then was set up around those concepts: integrity, responsibility, and which everyone says that, right? But
Sure.
here's the thing about integrity. And everyone says they have integrity, but inside a company, if everyone has a different definition of integrity, then in fact there is no integrity.
Hmm.
So the company has to have one definition of integrity, which then everyone knows what it is. So out of there are the four platforms that we used, and I would suggest this for any entrepreneur. It doesn't have to be the ones that I set out. So the ones we used was 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the book Good to Great, which I think is the best business book ever, The Psychology of Achievement by Brian Tracy. And inside of that is an hour of the psychology of why people do and do not goal set. And then the Landmark Forum course, which really sets what is responsibility, what is integrity, and what's the psychology about how and why people communicate.
So you did that. So you had them read those 4 books or go through those programs. And
Right.
then what's the accountability to that? So yeah, I read it, or is it no? Now there's an hour meeting to talk about the book. What was that like?
Yeah. So two things. One, we set up a linguistic abstraction. So we had about 30 terms and definitions that came out of these books that we use as our platform for communication. The other thing we did is that, this is actually the fascinating part. So we were so big on goal setting. So in a goal, it differentiates from a vision, because a goal is quantifiable with a buy-win date. So I'm going to take something pretty simple. So I'm sitting there, I'm 242 pounds, and I go, okay, by next December 31st, 2020, I am 230 pounds. Okay, that's a goal. Quantifiable with a buy-win date. It could be things like, I will take my family to Croatia for 7 days sometime next, in the year 2020, something like that.
Yep.
We had them split up between health, business, and personal. Now, the interesting thing that I discovered about goal setting, and it really came from the Landmark, about creating our present from the future, not from the past. So I found that even I was setting my goals based on the past. So I'm 242 pounds, and I want to be 230 based on being 242 pounds. But if I was to wake up in the hospital with amnesia and I had no idea how much I weighed or anything, and I had no past history at all, and I went and researched what a 6'3", 64-year-old man should weigh, it would say 208 pounds. So you can see the difference in goal setting between setting goals from an unknown future as opposed to a constrained past. And the difference would have been, 12 pounds. And that would have been a massive difference. And I only use that because it's easy numbers to use. But when people think about, their career, how much money they want to make, or how much time they want to put into loving their spouse, or how much time they want to spend with their children, that 12 pounds is 10%, which is what makes things work or don't work in life.
Yeah, that's the game changer, isn't it? So how did you drive that in your culture? I mean, what you personally, I know obviously as the founder, the CEO, the leader, the everything of that company early on, how did you personally drive culture?
Well, I actually, once I set the template up, as I said about so many things at Lululemon, I think I set a template up, and then we just had these amazing people that just took it and ran with it. I'm kind of an idea guy. I'm not a structural person, but I think that there was something in these goals that had people's lives really work for them. And of course, Lululemon, not only because of the product and the business model, but because of the type of people we have, ended up making so much money. It was almost a what do they call that? A prophecy.
Prophecy, yeah.
Yeah, it's going to happen. But I had a template for goal setting, in 18 goals. So you set a goals for, first off, you set a vision for your life, like 10 years out. So mine would have been, mine was like 20 or 30 years out. It was, I'm going to be sitting around a table at Thanksgiving with my children and grandchildren, and they're all going to be laughing at me because I'm old and crazy, I mean, if that happens at 85 or something, then I'm going to be a happy man, right?
Yep.
So then I start working my goals back from there. So what are the 10-year goals I have to have? What are the 5-year goals? And what are the 1-year goals? And when you start at the top of the vision, you work back, then it makes it pretty easy to do 1-year goals, seeing where you have to get in the 5 and 10.
Yep. Yeah, I don't disagree with that. And I think, and I'll just give you my concept and give me your feedback on this, but one of them is, I call it Focus 90. So when I walk in my office door every day, I set my briefcase down, I get my water. I know the things I got to do. I got 4 things I got to do the first 90 minutes of every day. And if I can win that moment, I'll win the rest of the day. Right. And then, right. But my 10-year goal, my 5-year goal, my 1-year goal, and my 90-day goals are all written on that same piece of paper. And I read it every morning.
Good for you. Well, that's probably why you are what you are.
Yeah, but your thoughts on that, right? I mean, that's probably your habits and your rituals when you were early on in your career. Those were the things you were doing, right? So if you can give us a thought of a goal. I know you said at one point you wanted to open 5 Lululemons, but what's an example? Because you don't probably say, I want to sell 1 million pair of pants, or I want to make $10 million. I mean, what were those goals at that time?
Well, before I say Lululemon, there's just when I was a competitive swimmer when I was young. So I think, so they had age groups, 10 and under, 11 and 12, 13, 14. So you knew that by the age of 14, that was the Canadian record, so to speak, or the American record, whatever you want to call it. And when you turned 15, you had to break the record by that day or you didn't. So it was automatic goal setting. I will swim the 100 backstroke in X time by the age of my 15th birthday. So that type of thing. So for me, I remember my wife and I originally setting out our goals. We had no money. We were in debt up to our eyeballs. But we were the template for everyone else in the company. My wife was the first designer, and so we were in it together. And so we decided we were going to have, in 10 years, we were going to have $30 million in the bank. We were going to have a $10 million house on the ocean, and we were going to have, and then what was it beyond that? Those were the material ones, which are really easy for me to remember because it happened. Now, what's interesting about that is because we had that set in, at a certain point when Lululemon became incredibly strong, and our cash flow was unbelievable. We decided that we were going to prioritize family, and we were going to prioritize the goals that we'd set. So then that decision then had to sell to private equity. We didn't have to sell to private equity. We didn't have to end up going public, but we as a family had these goals, and those goals are then driving our decision making.
Yep. Makes total sense, right? The personal vision, the personal goals are driven by the vehicle that you happen to be sitting in, right? And that's for you, that was Lululemon. So what changed for you when you were in debt up to your eyeballs, as you said, and now became massively successful financially? what changed?
I don't, well, I don't think anything changed. Yeah, by selling, of course, I lost control of Lululemon, and
Sure.
that's another story. Because I started Lululemon quite late in life, I mean, sometimes I get labeled with Colonel Sanders about starting businesses late. I guess I was about 42 when I started, but Lululemon really didn't, come to any success till I was 50. And, those 8 years were, like I said, a struggle to get there. But it was, so once you're 50, I don't think anyone changes, like it's the things that were always important to me was, of course, health. And because without health, that your ability to enjoy your family is very small.
Right.
And I think it comes down to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And first off, you got to take care of survival and reproduction. And once that's occurred, then you start moving into longevity and like healthy relationships. And I think that's where my priorities always lay.
Well, I think it's neat to hear you say that too, because people, I'm in the money business. It's what we do every day. And so people think once they reach these certain levels, right, whether it's 10 million or 100 million or a billion or 10 billion, that's going to be the trigger point for something in their life. And all the successful people I get to talk to, and people like yourself, there wasn't this moment of I have X in the bank and now my life is completely different, right?
Yeah. No, I mean, what money does allow someone to buy is time. And as I'm 64, I mean, you can get where like I have a driver, and I have a driver, and people go, "Oh my God, that's so ostentatious." But it's not any different than having an executive assistant or having a gardener at your
Right.
house. If I can pay that person $25 an hour, and I can do $300 worth of work at the time he drives me to my workout and back, then I make money on that.
Wow.
So and my whole idea behind saving time is so I can be with my children and family, because that's my highest priority.
So what's that dude or female? What are they doing right now? As we're speaking here today, where's the driver? Sitting outside waiting, or are they at home waiting for the end of the day?
No, because often I'll walk home or things like that. So
Okay.
especially in the summertime. So no, they take care of. We have a couple of houses, and they'll be taking care of some renovations that we have going on.
Nice.
If the car needs filled with gas, I'll do that, or I need to, all those things that you always wished you had someone to do, but doesn't do them. I got that person.
You got it. Good for, I'm giving you a fist pump right there. That's awesome. So what are your habits when you were on the grind versus today? I think we'll talk about both of them if we can, but what were the habits and rituals the no miss items that you had to do during the grind?
During the grind of building a business?
Building a business. I mean, it's, again, we talked earlier before we started recording, you have 5 sons, I've got 4 sons, and I'm at work, and then I go straight to a sporting event, and it's coaching. And then it's, you go home and you go to bed and you get up and you do it all over again. Right. It's this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
But what were those no miss items for you?
Well, it's funny you say the grind, because in Vancouver, we have 3 mountains inside the city, if you don't know, right on the ocean. So it's a phenomenal place. And I do this thing called the Grouse Grind every morning, 4 mornings a week. So it's a 1-hour hike straight up a mountain. So so when you said that, I was a little bit confused. So in my things I must do, first thing in the morning is I must get that endorphin rush. And so I will go to University of BC, which is maybe about a 10-minute drive away, and run the stairs, which takes about maybe 5 minutes to get to the top of the stairs, and then walk down. I'll do that 5 times. Wow. Or I'll do the Grouse Grind, which then takes an hour to do. It's just across the town. And then maybe, so that's critical for me. And then what do I do coming into work? During the grind part of Lululemon, what would have occurred? I think it's one of the things I made sure once a week I would sit down for an hour with just a pencil and a piece of paper and just think about where the future needed to be. I think my expertise is actually seeing the world 5 to 7 years in the future, which is really, really difficult for a lot of people I work with, because I'm kind of like, I'm willing to give up a lot of what's happening and good right now in order to build where the world is going. So that's important. And then I think it's just the regularly scheduled meetings, and then probably even leaving at 1 o'clock and going for a walk or going for like a 30-minute run would have been critical at that time. And then absolutely being home for dinner with my family was critical. Um, I Again, part of selling the company to private equity was either I had to make the choice of I was going to be traveling, I building a global business, so we were already in many countries already. Either I was going to be on the road building a business, or I was going to be letting that business let me raise a great family.
I
And
like
so I chose the family.
Well, that's a great choice. Great choice. It's neat to see somebody at your level, and that was still the number one priority. So congratulations on that. So what would you look back and tell the Chip Wilson, the 30-year-old Chip Wilson, or the 40-year-old Chip Wilson? What advice would you give that guy?
I would have given that guy the advice that I didn't need to sell to private equity, and I didn't need to go public. It's funny, I was listening to Bill Gates say exactly the same thing a couple months ago, and his big regret, just the ability to move quicker and faster. And I think entrepreneurs can see the future, and it's very, very difficult for other people to see, especially inside a public company. I could have, with the massive amount that Lululemon was making at the time I did private equity, I probably could have just gone to my bank and said, give me $40 million unencumbered. And then I would have been able to buy my $10 million house and put 30 million in the bank, and then run the business that way.
Yeah.
But I didn't, and I got a different outcome from it. So that would have been my I would say I went private equity, and in order to get advisors, because people had told me, well, I haven't run a billion-dollar company before, you don't know what you're doing, you need people around you. The advisors I got through private equity, I think they were self-interested. And so I had, of course, as they should be, right? I mean, I'm not naive in that, but what I mean is how I would have structured the deal going into private equity was really handcuffed me is when we went public. I lost control of the board. So consequently, I lost control of the culture at Lululemon. Yeah. And Lululemon went probably through 5 years of the greatest growth in athletic clothing between probably 2013 and 2018 when it just went flat. If you look at the stock, it went nowhere because it kind of self-imploded, because it just had board of directors that, you know, were your normal run-of-the-mill trying to do good people, but you know, who were running by fear as opposed to possibility.
Yeah. So talk to us about that. I ask this in every episode, fear. You mentioned it, so we'll bring it up now, but how many of the fears you put in your mind over your career blew up to the magnitude you put them in your mind to be?
Do I have them? Fears.
So you probably put some in your mind early on, right? Like maybe this won't make it. Maybe I'll go bankrupt. Whatever the fears were in your mind. How many of those actually blew up, though?
Well, I don't think, I can't say they actually did. I don't think I had that many. I don't think I had fears like that. I think part of what works for me in life is I'm incredibly trusting, and I believe in people, what they say to me. And I'm incredibly positive about the future. So I think that masks a lot of what other people have as fears. Now, where that works for me, because I get incredible people around me. We can build a great company, but then I also attract a certain number of people that are, let's say, unable to make money on their own, but they're entrepreneurial, knowing how to make money off of people who have my personality. And I have to sit back and go, well, I was always that way. You know, I drove an old car and left the keys in it because you want to take my car, go for it. I just don't, you know, because details and small things in life are very, very, they just can't take up my mind, because I've got like big ideas. So I need to free my mind to love and trust everybody, to think of possibility and be out there in the future, not get consumed with fear and what ifs.
I love that. So you don't have to name drop unless you want to, which is totally fine. But I mean, so when somebody gets to your level now, I mean, who are you surrounding yourself with to keep yourself a student of the game and, you know, grabbing lunch with? I mean, what is that buddy system like for you now today with your level?
You know, interestingly enough, having been in Canada and being and on the west coast of Canada, I mean,
Yeah.
there's nobody here. Like, you
Yeah.
know, there's very. I have a, you know, a 90-year-old billionaire here in Vancouver, Joe Siegel, who was in the apparel business and is a wonderful, wonderful man. And I think about, you know, 5 years ago, he said to me, you know, Chip, you know, like you got two more big ones in you, you
Hmm.
know. And so I went, wow, that's interesting. And, you know, he said to me, you know, at 60, I kind of like, you know, it's not like I retired, but I started putting my money into real estate. I was making my 7% return a year. And here I am, 90 years old, and I've, you know, yeah, what have I done in 30 years? I've done nothing. You know, it wasn't exciting. He said,
Right.
you know, like take 50% of all your own and risk it all. You
Wow.
know, I mean, what's it going to matter? Like do things that are, you know, outstanding. And then he also applied that to philanthropy, like rather than kind of spray and pay and doing a little bit here and there, you know, like what's really going to change the dial in the world, which I can do with the amount of money I have.
Yeah.
So that's probably one really key person.
That's awesome. I love that. So you said smartphone, it's killed the balanced life. Now there's only life choices. I love that.
Yeah.
So true. Talk to us about that.
Well, it was because I'm older, I got the context of observing my employees and observing people. And of course I have, you know, 5 boys, so I get to observe them too. And even myself, and I could see where, with the digital world, probably starting in 95 or something like that, the amount of information that was coming to each and individual person was becoming exponential. And I could also see that, you know, the algorithms that, you know, Google or Facebook or whoever has to keep you on their site and use them as much as possible was eating up people's, it was entertaining people in a way that gave them an endorphin rush. Um, what I saw then is that life was passing people by, as often happens, without realizing that, oh, like 10 years has gone by, and have I really appreciated my life? Have I appreciated what I've done, where I've gone to, the people around me? Um, so and then at a certain point, it became so easy to have a smartphone that you didn't need to be, you know, when you're, you know, when you're at the office, you're at the office, or your family with your family. But now you could choose to be anywhere, anytime.
Right.
Basically, what I'm getting at is that because life was moving exponentially, the number of times a person has to stop and be present to the world and be present to the people around them and what's happening, and to actually appreciate the life they have in that very exact moment has to happen not once every 4 months, but I actually expect today it needs to happen like 4 or 5 times a day.
Wow.
Because that phone can absorb everything, and pretty soon, as what happens to many people, they lay on their deathbed and they go, what the hell happened to my life?
Yep.
What happened in that moment? Why didn't I appreciate it when I was there? And I think that's a life worth living.
Well, we both have 13-year-olds, you know, and you think of their life at 13 versus your and I's life at 13, completely different, right? It creates this addiction.
Yeah. And it also, I'm fascinated by how much the brain can absolutely absorb. And, you know, we were told when we were young, our brain, we're only using it to 4 or 5% of what's possible. And
Right.
now learning how much information can be stored in there.
Lots of capacity.
They're smart people.
So if I stole your phone from you right now, besides email, and I say I'm gonna delete an app, any phone, anything on your phone that just Chip Wilson could not live without. Speaking of technology,
I think it's this new app called Word Power. It's
Word
kind of
power.
it's a crossword, and it's works on it only gives you 7 letters, and it's a crossword puzzle, and you got to fill it all out. And I find myself totally addicted to it. And
Speaking
so
of putting your phone down, right?
anytime. Well, it's been interesting because I actually, when I was in Spain this last week, and I, it was a heat wave. Like it was, what was 123 degrees, and I'm
Oh man.
25K a day. I run across this cold, fresh pond, and I dive in, and of course I've got my ear pods on, and I've got my phone here, and everything falls into the pond. And so I've been without a phone for 3 days now. So
Uh-oh.
I take your point very seriously.
Yeah, exactly. So what favorite book you can recommend for our listeners
Um,
besides your own?
Legacy
Legacy.
by Kerr, and it's about the most winning sports team in history. It's the New Zealand All Blacks,
Oh yeah, I've heard about that book.
and I read it. And I went, oh my God, this is a story about the culture of Lululemon, to top to bottom. There's absolutely no difference. Everything that they quote in there about how they learned and how they directed the people was all around good to great, the landmark form, 7 habits of highly effective people,
Yep.
and goal setting. So it was like, oh, it's kind of neat to see that the number one winningest team in the world, use the same platform.
Right. Yeah, that book's it's going to be around for generation after generation, isn't it? The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People.
Yeah, I mean, what's not to love?
Right.
Yeah.
So your favorite trip? You've been around the world, obviously, probably multiple times. So if you could go anywhere again today, where are you going?
We're going to the Anti-Atlas Mountains in Morocco, and we're hiking for 7 or 8 days. Call it glamour camping, where we have lots of Sherpas and cooks, everything else, and they set the tents up and tear them down. But the terrain there and the moving from desert to the upper mountains to the foothills to canyons was I did it before, and that's the only thing our family wants to do again.
And so all your kids are going, everything on this trip, huh?
It's the best. I think hiking now could be the last way that parents can have their kids put their phones away, because there's no service. And
Right.
it's amazing, especially with boys. After 2 hours of silence, they start talking.
Right, exactly. Start talking and start fighting, right? So where can our listeners find more of Chip Wilson?
Well, I guess they can find just going to chipwilson.com. I have there, and you can kind of find everything from there.
Yeah.
And definitely, I think it's probably reading my book, and thanks for plugging it a bit.
Absolutely.
I think it's a great business book for entrepreneurs.
And so you're sitting in an office there, it looks like. What's Chip Wilson's day look like today?
What did I do today? I got up, I took my boy to summer school. I came back, I'm without my phone. So I had to, I walked here, so it was an hour and a half to walk to work along the ocean front of Vancouver, which is stunning. And I come through Gastown, which is our old part of the town where I am. And then I got into, I had a call with a guy that did an article on me from London a few months ago about the Lululemon AGM. And then of course I hadn't been here for 2 weeks. So there's all sorts of packages with apparel samples and getting those to the right people. And and someone wrote a book about, I'll just show you. I just got it. Actually, I don't even know. It's called B magazine. I haven't even unwrapped it, but it's about a third party that does synopsises on brands, and I think that's one of the greatest things that we did at Lululemon is I put a lot of my sayings on the outside of the bag, and but Lululemon doesn't shoot. They only put 2 or 3 on now. They don't put the 50 on I had before, because
It's a lot cooler then.
we live in a world where you can't actually say truth anymore.
You might hurt somebody's feelings, Chip.
Oh, I know. It's terrible. Yeah.
It's terrible.
And I'm
You even got them in the socks. You got them on the band of the T-shirts. They were everywhere.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, Chip, it's been awesome having you, man. And it's crazy what you have done. You've literally changed the way people dress. I mean, have you ever really thought about that?
Yeah, I have. And it's, of course, I dressed that way for so long.
Sure.
Even back in the day of going to work in a suit and tie, I had my skateboard shoes on because I skateboarded to work. And I think people now kind of thinking that, wearing running shoes with a suit is kind of trendy. And
Right.
but it's neat to see the world catch up to the way I thought life should be lived.
Yeah. Well, that little black stretchy pants that you've made has changed the way people dress, the women dress. And it's amazing how you probably thought they were just going to be yoga pants, and now they wear them dressy too, right?
Well, I knew that from the surf skate snowboard business that,
Yeah.
you make a product that's technical and looks good on the street. It was kind of Italian styling with West Coast function, I call it.
Nice.
So, yeah.
Well, very good. Well, Chip, thank you so much for being on the Circuit of Success, and continued success to you. And we appreciate your time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Brett. My brother is Brett and my son is Brett, by the way.
Oh, perfect. 2 T's.
Yeah.
I like it.